Everyday US politicians tell us that America must decouple from China and move manufacturing back to the United States. But something remarkable is happening behind the scenes. When you look at the data, some of the largest and most important American companies are actually increasing their manufacturing in China, buying more components from China, and building a deeper relationship with China. As the world prepares for a second Donald Trump presidency this January, all eyes will be on the White House as Trump navigates this complex US-China relationship. Throughout his re-election campaign, Trump told American voters that he would be tough on China, threatening to impose tariffs on all Chinese imports. But will this strategy actually work? Is it possible for Donald Trump and his cabinet to sanction and tariff their way to success and bring manufacturing jobs back to America? While all of this sounds good to Republican voters who believe Donald Trump will make America great again, the simple reality is it's almost impossible to move these jobs back to the United States for three main reasons. In today's video, we're going to break down these reasons and explain why no matter what Donald Trump does in office, China will remain the key driver of economic growth for the majority of nations around the world, including the United States. This is going to be a fun episode. Let's begin. Today's video is sponsored by Private Internet Access. Stay tuned for an exciting offer from our sponsor. Let's start by establishing a baseline and looking at the sheer volume of trade that happens between the US and China. Take a look at this chart that shows the trade balance between the two countries over the past quarter century. You'll notice that over the last decade, the US has been sharply increasing its trade with China almost every single year. Let's take it one step further and examine the total value of monthly imports and exports between the US and China over the past 24 months. Once again, notice the remarkable consistency. There has been no significant decrease in trade. Despite all the rhetoric coming from Washington, D.C., it's business as usual between the US and China. To understand why this is happening, we simply need to do alternative research outside of the mainstream media, which only portrays China in a negative light. For example, if you read this white paper report published by the American Chamber of Commerce in China, it reveals the exact mindset of many US companies. More than 90% of the participating companies select China as one of the most important investment destinations, and 75% of the companies plan to reinvest in China. There is a phenomenal shift happening right now because China is inventing the technology that will control the future of our world. Don't believe me? Look at this article from the Financial Times. EU to demand technology transfers from Chinese companies. For decades, a core part of China's development strategy was to find clever ways to transfer technology from the West. But now, the roles are reversed. The West is trying to figure out how to transfer technology from China. In fact, this is one of the biggest misconceptions about China. Most people believe foreign companies relocate their manufacturing to China for cheap labor, but this is actually false. Just listen to the wise words of Apple CEO Tim Cook as he reveals the truth.
There's a confusion about China, and let me at least give you my opinion. The popular conception is that companies come to China because of low labor costs. I'm not sure what part of China they go to, but the truth is China stopped being the low labor cost country many years ago. The reason is because of the skill, the quantity of skill in one location, and the type of skill it is.
Tim Cook speaks the simple truth. What good is it to have low labor costs if you can't find highly skilled people to manufacture your products and don't have the infrastructure to transport the goods? If labor costs were the #1 aspect of manufacturing, then we would see thousands of foreign companies scrambling to India to build factories. But despite India's cheap labor, the country doesn't have the skilled workers or the infrastructure to compete with China. I broke all of this down in another video, 10 reasons why India is not the next China. I'll link it for you to watch at the end of today's video. But once again, we need to dig deeper into this story and reveal to you the real reason why China will continue to be the world's factory. In the future, manufacturing will be defined by a shift to clean energy, which means that solar panels, wind turbines, and electric vehicles will be at the forefront. And when it comes to green energy, China is the undeniable powerhouse, completely dominating the industry. Their control over these technologies isn't just significant, it's a game changer, and it's why research articles are being published showcasing that China holds all the cards in the great green energy game. Inside this article, it reveals that crucial rare earth minerals are needed for the green energy transition, and once again, China holds a near monopoly. We simply cannot understate the value of these rare earth metals. Back in 1987, Deng Xiaoping famously said that the Middle East has oil and China has rare earths. He couldn't be more correct. While the reserves of rare earths are scattered around around the globe, 40% are found in China. When it comes to extracting them, over 70% of rare earths are mined in China. Further downstream, China trumps all, processing nearly 90% of rare earths. Not only does China own the entire supply chain, but China also has the most talent and research into the fields that will drive the 21st century. It's no secret that China is producing the most amount of STEM graduates, and science, technology, engineering, and mathematics is not only the future of manufacturing, but also the future of our world, with STEM jobs projected to grow faster than all other jobs over the next decade. China has an outsized dominance in mining and mineral engineering. In fact, if we look at the recent global ranking, Chinese universities dominate this field, occupying 6 of the top 10 positions, with Australia occupying the remaining 4. The USA doesn't have a single university that ranks in the top 15. When it comes to the production and purification of metals, this is a specialized field of engineering called metallurgical engineering. Once again, China dominates this field, occupying all top 5 positions, with the US having only 1 university in the top 10. And finally, let's look at chemical engineering, which tells a similar story. MIT, one of the best American universities, ranks number 1 worldwide in this field, but China occupies 13 of the top 16 positions. Combine this with the sheer volume of STEM graduates coming from China every year, and it's easy to see why China is the dominant force in high-end manufacturing. Once again, let's listen to Apple CEO Tim Cook explain why this engineering expertise is so important to foreign companies manufacturing in China.
The products we do require really advanced tooling, and the precision that you have to have in tooling and working with the materials that we do are state of the art. And the tooling skill is very deep here. You know, in the US, you could have a meeting of tooling engineers, and I'm not sure we could fill the room. In China, you could fill multiple football fields. It's that vocational expertise is very deep, very, very deep here.
Video clips like these are almost impossible to find in Western media because it goes against everything our US politicians preach to us every day. US politicians want you to believe that China is the greatest threat to America, when in reality, China has helped grow the US economy tremendously over the past 50 years. The New York Times recently published an amazing article entitled "Breaking Up with China is Hard to Do," and inside it reveals some astonishing facts about the US-China trade war that will absolutely amaze you. I'm going to break them down for you, but first, I do want to give a huge thank you to Private Internet Access, who is the sponsor of today's video and an important tool that I literally use every single day of my life. Whenever you connect to the internet on a public Wi-Fi network, at airports, coffee shops, or even at your own home, your data is at risk of being stolen. But a virtual private network, or VPN for short, is an app that hides your IP address and safeguards your internet connection through an encrypted tunnel. I'm constantly on the road for work, and I trust Private Internet Access to help keep my most valuable data, including this very YouTube channel, safe and secure. But I also use PIA for my personal life. For example, watching Netflix without a VPN is like purchasing a business class ticket and then being told you can only sit in economy. Sometimes your favorite TV shows or sporting events are blocked out due to your location, but simply turn on PIA and you can instantly switch your IP address to one of 91 countries and all 50 states, allowing you to gain access to websites and services available only in those locations. What I love most about PIA is that with one subscription, I can protect an unlimited number of devices at the same time. PIA is also the world's most transparent VPN provider with over 30 million downloads. Everyone, shows like this wouldn't be possible without our sponsors. And if you don't have a VPN, I want you to consider using PIA. Simply go to piavpn.com/Cyrus to receive an incredible 83% off the retail price. And because you're my loyal subscriber, an additional 4 months of coverage will be credited to your account as well. Try it all risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. And now, let's get back to our story and reveal why US companies can't say goodbye to manufacturing in China. As I mentioned in the beginning of today's video, the West is starting to recognize the superior technology coming from China, and many American companies are left with an interesting question to answer. Should we attempt to compete with China and overtake their technology at a significant cost, or do we cede the market to the Chinese and simply become their customers? This is the exact dilemma that Jim Farley, CEO of Ford Motor Company, is facing. Throughout 2024, Mr. Farley spent a significant amount of time in China and came back to the US realizing that legacy car makers face an existential threat in China. China is simply too far ahead in the EV industry that Western automakers literally have no chance to compete with China. Ford has predicted they will lose $5 billion on its electric vehicle operations, and remember, that's in spite of high tariffs that block Chinese EVs from entering the American market. Ford has now decided its best option is to pivot strategies and take subsidies from the US government to make batteries in Michigan. But here's the catch. Ford will license the battery technology from China's CATL, the world's largest maker of EV batteries, once again proving that without China, Ford would not have a future in the EV industry. But now let's take a look at Apple's business in China and reveal just how important China is to one of America's most valuable brands. Earlier this year, Nikkei Asia reported that Apple is moving closer to China despite supply chain shifts. Once again, there is a stark difference between what US politicians preach and what pragmatic business leaders are doing in China. Apple is increasing its use of parts from both Chinese suppliers and manufacturing sites, while using fewer suppliers from Taiwan, the United States, Japan, and South Korea. Despite political tensions between the US and China, the 21st century belongs to Asia, and smart American companies will embrace this shift to the east. Apple announced earlier this year it was expanding a research center in Shanghai and opening a new tech lab in Shenzhen. But if the domination in resources, technology, and talent isn't enough, the infrastructure used to facilitate this manufacturing and transport it around the world is second to none. From fully automated ports to the most extensive high-speed rail network, China has spent decades building up a world-class network of infrastructure that simply no other nation can compete with. In addition, let's not forget the over 150 countries who have joined China's Belt and Road Initiative. Altogether, China has built the world's largest and most extensive trading network that further cements its status as the world's factory and ensures that not only are products going to continue to be made in China, but they will be seamlessly transported and distributed efficiently throughout the globe. As you can see, the cards are stacked pretty heavily against America. Instead of adopting some of China's industrial policies to catch up or allowing American consumers to benefit from affordable, high-quality Chinese products, our politicians have made the worst decision possible. Trump decided to use tariffs as his main tool to address the trade deficit during his first term, which was then carried over and expanded during the Biden administration. We have almost 8 years of data to show that tariffs do not work in their reported purpose of relocating factories back to the United States. Instead, the additional costs from tariffs are passed on to the consumer, making everyday Americans, and certainly not China, the biggest loser. If you find this hard to believe, simply listen to the wise words of billionaire investor Mark Cuban, who explains why tariffs always fail. The majority of American consumers will not pay up for American-made products. If they would, all of this would be moot. Companies would have an incentive to build here, even if it costs more. The second is companies, by default, are patriotic and want to build here. If they could build cheaper here, they already would be doing so. To be honest, this is such a simple concept to understand. In order for manufacturing to come back to the United States, one of two things need to happen. Number one, the cost of manufacturing has to be reduced. Or number two, the price buyers are willing to pay has to go up. It is as simple as that. This is not complex, but it's amazing how so many US politicians don't understand basic economics. Consumers will always prefer the lowest cost option of a product, regardless of where it comes from. This just goes to show that these tariffs are unserious and politically motivated. I'll share with you one final case study that illustrates this point so clearly. In 2008, the United States was the powerhouse manufacturer of solar panels, controlling over 45% of market share. But fast forward 16 years, and US manufacturing is barely visible on this graph. China has transformed the industry with superior manufacturing and now dominates the future of solar energy. This is an important lesson for all Americans to learn. It wasn't so long ago that we could compete at mass-producing critical technologies like solar panels, but with the wrong government policies in place, the number one position can change in just a few short years. At the end of the day, the idea that America can easily decouple from China just doesn't hold up against the reality of the global manufacturing landscape. China's dominance in green energy, rare earth minerals, engineering talent, and infrastructure is simply unmatched. For America to bring manufacturing back, it would need massive investments in workforce development, infrastructure, and supply chain. But instead, we're doubling down on tariffs, which, as we've seen, will only add costs for the American consumers while leaving China's grip on global manufacturing largely untouched. Unless the US makes serious changes to its industrial policies and priorities, the Made in America dream might just stay that, a dream. Instead of hoping tariffs or political pressure will somehow change the fundamental economic advantages that China holds, it's time for America to rethink its approach and focus on building a competitive edge where it really matters. Everyone, thank you for making it to this point of the video. And if you want to see a behind-the-scenes tour of an actual factory in China and see where China's competitive advantage truly is, I want you to click here to watch my video tour of a Chinese textile factory. This is one of my top 10 all-time most popular videos on YouTube, and it's an incredible story that I don't want you to miss. Thank you all for your support, and I'll see you soon in our next video.